10 years of marriage. A kind, steady husband named David. A comfortable house in a leafy Austin suburb where the evenings stretch long and warm. A good life. It really should have been enough. But then there was him, Michael, David's best friend since college. And one look across a crowded patio that started a fire I couldn't control. Have you ever felt that restlessness creep in even when everything looks perfect on the surface? Or felt drawn to the one person you absolutely shouldn't? Tell me about it below and make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. This path gets complicated fast. My life wasn't thrilling, maybe, but it was secure. David was a good man, dependable, loving, the kind of husband I knew I was fortunate to have. And I was grateful. Mostly. But Michael was always there, woven into the fabric of our lives. Backyard barbecues under the Texas stars, lazy Sundays watching football, holidays. He had this easy charm, a quick wit, but underneath it, a current of quiet intensity I'd only recently dared to acknowledge was pulling me under. Or perhaps I'd always felt it and only now, in my late 30s, allowed myself to name the danger. It started small, insidious. A glance held a fraction too long over wine glasses. His hand brushing mine as he passed something. The contact lingering just enough to make my skin prickle. Words that were simple but felt loaded. "You look amazing tonight, Claire." Innocent enough. But the low timbre of his voice, the way his eyes held mine, made my breath catch every single time. I tried to rationalize it, told myself I was starved for attention, reading into a friendship I'd witnessed for years. But the more I denied the electric hum between us, the louder it became. One typical Friday night, David invited Michael over. Nothing out of the ordinary. I made tacos, poured margaritas, the familiar rhythm of our friendship playing out. But beneath the laughter and casual conversation, something else simmered. Every time I looked up, Michael's gaze seemed to be waiting, dark, intense, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. Later, David stepped onto the porch to take a call, leaving Michael and me alone in the warm glow of the kitchen. My heart began to pound. I busied myself clearing plates, acutely aware of him leaning against the counter just feet away. "You seem quiet tonight," Michael observed, his voice soft, intimate in the sudden quiet. I forced a lightness I didn't feel, not turning around. "Just tired, I guess." He didn't respond right away. Then I felt him move closer, the heat of his body near my back. Too close. Dangerously close. "I think about you, Claire," he said, his voice so low it was almost a breath against my ear. "Way more than I should." I spun around then, pulse erratic. "Michael, don't." My voice was barely a whisper. He searched my face, his own expression stripped bare for the first time, revealing the conflict, the desire I'd been so desperately pretending not to see mirrored in myself. And in that instant, the denial shattered. This wasn't just me. It never had been. That moment of raw, terrifying honesty when everything unspoken comes crashing out. It changes everything, doesn't it? Give this video a like if you've ever felt that kind of dangerous truth hanging in the air. "I can't help it," he admitted, his voice thick with an emotion I refused to name. The space between us vibrated, charged and suffocating. Every rational thought screamed at me to run, to shut this down, to reinforce the boundaries he was crossing. But I was frozen, my silence a deafening confession. David's laugh drifted in from the porch, yanking me back. I flinched away, breaking the spell. Michael let out a sharp breath, dragging a hand through his hair, his composure momentarily fractured. "I should probably go." I could only nod, afraid my voice would betray me. He left quickly, leaving me gripping the cool granite countertop, the only solid thing in a world suddenly spinning off its axis. Nothing felt stable anymore. After that night, the dynamic shifted irrevocably. Michael became a gravitational pull I couldn't escape. At parties, barbecues, even casual group hangouts, the invisible thread connecting us thrummed with awareness. A shared glance across a room that felt like a secret conversation. A brush of his arm against mine that sent illicit shivers down my spine. I told myself I was stronger than this, that nothing would happen, that loyalty and years of routine would win out. But every time he looked at me with that knowing intensity, something vital inside me unraveled further. Then, one sweltering Saturday afternoon, the inevitable happened. David had asked Michael to swing by and help him move something heavy into the garage. But David got held up at the hardware store longer than expected. I was inside, trying to busy myself, trying to ignore the fact that Michael was just outside, that we were essentially alone. And then he walked into the kitchen for some water. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing us in the cool air conditioning, but the temperature between us skyrocketed. I kept my gaze fixed on the cutting board, chopping vegetables with unnecessary force. "You shouldn't be here," I murmured. Michael sighed, the sound heavy. "I know." The silence stretched, thick with unspoken longing. Then softly, "But you feel it too, Claire. Don't you?" I closed my eyes, squeezing the knife handle. "Deny it. I protect the life you have." But the words lodged in my throat. When I finally forced myself to meet his gaze, he was standing right there, impossibly close. Close enough to see the conflicted storm in his dark eyes. Close enough to feel the undeniable pull. It was reckless, dangerous, wrong on every conceivable level. But my heart, starved for something I couldn't define, didn't care. Just then, the sound of David's truck pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. Michael stepped back instantly, his expression shuddering, jaw tight. His eyes held mine for one last, intense second before the spell broke completely. I turned away, my breath catching, desperate to compose myself before David walked in. But the damage was done. This wasn't the end of the tension. It felt like the fuse had just been lit. Do you believe some attractions are just destined to cross the line, no matter how hard you fight it? Let me know your thoughts, and make sure you subscribe because this fire is about to ignite. The memory of that near miss, the weight of what remained unspoken, haunted me. Guilt became my constant companion. I tossed and turned at night, caught between the image of my trusting husband and the illicit thrill Michael sparked in me. The comfortable rhythm of my life with David now felt like a facade I was struggling to maintain. Every morning cup of coffee, every shared dinner felt tainted by my secret awareness, my internal betrayal. My phone buzzed one morning while David was reading the news beside me. Michael's name. "Need to see you." My fingers trembled. Delete it. Ignore him. Be strong. But the part of me awakened by his attention, the part tired of feeling just comfortable, typed back before I could stop myself. When? I quickly flipped the phone over. "Everything okay?" David asked absently. "Yeah." I lied, the ease of it frightening me. "Just work stuff." We met later, finding a quiet trail by the river, away from familiar eyes. Seeing him there, looking just as tense and conflicted as I felt, offered no comfort, only amplified the turmoil. "We need to figure this out, Claire," he said, his voice strained. I nodded, hugging myself. "What is there to figure out, Michael? We know what this is." "It's wrong. I don't regret feeling this," he admitted, stepping closer. "Do you?" I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "It's not about regret right now. It's about David. Our lives." "And us?" he pressed, his gaze searching mine. "Doesn't this, what's between us, mean something?" I closed my eyes, the memory of his near touch in the kitchen searingly fresh. "That's the problem, Michael," I whispered brokenly. "It feels like it means too much." His fingers brushed mine, hesitant then firm. "So what do we do?" I snatched my hand back as if burned. "We stop," I insisted, trying to inject conviction I didn't feel. "We have to stop. Go back." His jaw clenched. "Can we, Claire? Can you?" I wanted to scream yes. Wanted to believe we could put this dangerous energy back in its box. But the frantic, aching beat of my own heart called me a liar. The attempt to create distance was futile. He occupied my thoughts, filled the empty spaces. The avoidance only seemed to heighten the pull. Then David went on a 2-day work trip. The first night, Michael texted, "Just checking if you're okay alone." An innocent enough message. But we both knew it wasn't. I shouldn't have replied. I shouldn't have unlocked the door when he knocked hours later, saying he was just driving by. But I did. The moment he stepped inside, the air crackled, sealing our fate. "This is wrong," I whispered again, a mantra losing its power even as I moved towards him. He framed my face with his hands, his touch gentle yet possessive. "Then why?" he murmured, his eyes dark with longing. "Does it feel so damn right?" My breath hitched. I had no defense left. I was tired of fighting it, tired of the good enough life. Right then, playing with fire felt better than the cold numbness I hadn't realized I was living in. When he looked at me like that, like I was the only thing that mattered, I felt utterly, dangerously alive. And so, I let the fire consume us. Again. And again in the stolen moments that followed. Each time, a hollow promise to myself. This is the last time. It's terrifying how easy it is to justify things when desire takes hold. Isn't it? Like this video if you've ever wrestled with that kind of internal conflict. The guilt, however, was relentless. It became a bitter taste in my mouth, a constant shadow. Looking at David, my kind, unsuspecting husband, felt like physical pain. I was living a double life, becoming someone I despised yet couldn't seem to stop. I tried to compartmentalize, to keep the affair separate from my real life, but the edges were blurring, the deceit bleeding into everything. Then, one evening, David looked at me across the dinner table with an unfamiliar scrutiny. "You seem different lately, Claire," he said quietly, his brow furrowed slightly. My stomach plummeted. I forced a laugh. "Different how?" "Just tired." He hesitated, his gaze searching mine. "I don't know. Distant. Like part of you isn't here." He reached out, taking my hand. His familiar touch felt alien now, accusatory. "If something's wrong, you know you can tell me, right?" His sincerity, his trust, was a knife twisting in my gut. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt like cracking porcelain. "Of course, David. Everything's fine." That night, lying awake beside him, the silence screamed louder than any words. The weight of my choices pressed down, suffocating me. I had chased a spark, a feeling of being alive, but what was the cost? I had thought I could contain the fire, but it was threatening to burn down everything. Michael and I had crossed into treacherous territory, and there was no map back. How long could this intricate web of lies hold? What happens when the thrill fades and only the consequences remain? Is any feeling worth destroying lives over? Let me know your deepest thoughts on this below. Hit like one last time if you felt Claire's struggle, and please subscribe, the inevitable crash is coming. The only certainty left was the impending collision with the truth. How long before it caught up?